Hey there, welcome back to the Inherent Identity podcast. And I just wanted to start off this episode by telling you that the conversation that you're about to tune into was something that was prompted, in a sense, through a myriad of connections and whatnot. I ended up talking with this guy named Bobby Mitchell. And I don't have anything else to say necessarily about him except for that he is seeking to follow God. Just like me, we're seeking to listen more often than we ever have in our entire lives. And it was like midstream of our conversation that was never meant to be recorded. It was simply a networking conversation. And as he kept speaking, I was like, I want to capture this. And so I pressed record in the middle of him talking, and then we kept talking, and he shared some really neat stories. One of which is at the end of this episode that I find just miraculous. And it's these miraculous stories that I think are really helpful for all of us to just know that God is in our lives and he's working miracles. One thing that he shared that wasn't fully captured was a reference to two separate scriptures. And I just want to read those scriptures to you and share the message behind what he wanted to convey, just so you have some context. So the first scripture is from Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. And it says, "But without faith, it is impossible to please him." So it's impossible to please God without faith, without trusting him. And so if we take that scripture on its own, it's like, oh man, um, a lot of times I don't have very much faith. And then he pairs it with Philippians chapter 2, verse 13, which says, "For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure." And the way that he shared these scriptures is along the lines of God wants to bless us with the faith to please him. He wants to bless us with everything needed to follow him. If you think about the man who wanted his son to be healed, and he asked the Lord, "Help thou mine unbelief." It's kind of like that. Christ still healed his son and, in a way, gifted him the faith to believe, or was willing enough, even with our meager efforts of faith and trust, to still heal and support and do the works of miracles in our lives. And so I just wanted to share this little tidbit with you and to let you come into this conversation that I have with Bobby Mitchell because I felt the need to. There's nothing beyond that. And any of you that are listening to this, you are wanting to take a similar journey of seeing what might happen in your life if you really did trust in God at the deepest level. I know that as you listen to this, that you will be strengthened to take a leap of faith, to strengthen your trust, and to be nourished by just a powerful and beautiful story. So, anyways, we will get right into this conversation that I have with Bobby Mitchell.
His conversation with me has been faith, forgiveness, salvation is none of those things are a one-step process. The first step in all of those things that's common is it has to happen here. It has to happen between your ears first. You have to make a decision to forgive. You have to make a decision to believe, to trust, to have faith. The salvation, you have to accept that this is being offered to you and it's not effective to you unless you accept and receive it. But the second step of faith and the second step of forgiveness is now walking out, actively in action, walking out what you have decided you believe. And
Mhm.
the hardest part for us in faith is not the determining, yeah, God, I believe you. You're trustworthy. I can read scripture and see how you took care of Abraham and Moses and Noah and David and all these other people. That's almost intuitive, right? I can read it. Yeah, I believe that. It's the when he calls you to the edge of the cliff and he says, there's no more money left from the sale of the house, there's no more money left from the 401k investment. And I'm not just asking you to dangle your feet over the edge of this cliff. And I'm not even just asking you to take a step off the cliff. I'm telling you, if you'll get back as far as you can and you'll run as hard as you can to the edge of this cliff and you'll leap out as far as you can possibly leap, you take off every limitation of what I'm willing to do in you, for you, and through you. But if you only sit here and dangle your feet off the edge, then you limit what I'm able to do in you, for you, and through you. And I heard somebody, I think the quote is attributed to Billy Graham. He keeps bringing this back to me too.
Mhm.
And it was a guy who was asking Billy Graham, with all the evil and violence and hatred and slavery and trafficking and all of that stuff that's in the world, how can you possibly believe in a good God?
Mhm.
I can't make that leap with you when I see all that I see, all the filth and dirt and grime and just the worst of humanity, how there can possibly be a good God that sort of oversees all of this. And Billy Graham looked at the guy and he said, with all of the soap in the world, why are there still so many dirty people? And he said, both things are connected. The availability of soap is for everyone, but it's only effective to those who will apply it personally. Just like salvation, just like sanctification, just like our walk with God, just like our faith in God. All of this stuff is available to everybody equally, but it's only effective to those who will actually personally apply it. And so the act of walking out your faith is essential. It can't just stay here as a decision and a determination. It has to be acted upon in a way that's consistent with what you say you believe about.
Mm.
And so I don't know if that helps you in
Yeah.
any way. I don't know what that's for. It's just what he's been speaking to me in the last week,
Yeah.
uh, and speaking through me to nearly everybody that I come in contact with. I can't get away from the topic, but it resonates so deeply in me. And I tell people that's not coming from a guy who has left one side of the river and has landed on the other side of the river. This is coming from a guy who's the next canoe over, and I'm paddling in the same direction you're paddling, and I haven't arrived anywhere, you know. But in a very very real sense, he's waited for us to go through every resource that we have. And then he says, now open a business. Okay. Well, what about this ministry thing? Yep. Yep. I'm going to take care of the ministry stuff. And even if it's only ever ministry within the four walls of the building that I'm going to give you, that'll be enough.
Mhm. Yeah. And then what's really interesting is that you mentioned dangling your feet on the edge of a cliff. It wasn't but maybe 2 days ago. No, this was actually yesterday. I lead everyone in the morning through a visualization where it's like it's one thing to imagine a peaceful place and connect with God there. It's another thing to ask the Lord, Lord, where do you want to meet? And just to see what comes up as far as visualizing where to go. And at first, nothing really came, but then the words the brink came. And so here's what I imagine: edge of a cliff, right? That's the brink to me. So imagine at the end of the cliff, and what the Lord wants to do is he's in front of me to my right, he's holding my right hand, and he's kind of leading. He's like, we're gonna run down this thing. So we just go running. It's like we're running down it, not like we're falling. We're running down it, and then we start flying. It's like we got those fly suits,
Wingsuit. Yeah.
wingsuit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we start flying into the sun, And so you mentioned just dangling off feet of the cliff, and you just want. I'm just like, yeah, that's what I recently experienced.
I talked to a lady yesterday. I have a friend who has a deliverance ministry in Atlanta, and so he does a ton just by phone,
Yeah.
people that are struggling with addiction or, my family has seen tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. Well, that might be a generational thing.
Yeah.
And so he prays with people and breaks a lot of that stuff off just by the grace of God. And he had a conversation with a lady a few weeks ago, and he and I were having this faith conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
And an hour later, I get a text saying, "Hey, Bobby, I want to introduce you to Jennifer. And Jennifer, this is Bobby, and I'm just supposed to connect you guys. So take off." And so I just, okay, Jennifer, if you have time to talk, I'd love to hear your story. If you're willing to share, I'd just love to hear what's God doing for you. And so we set up a time and we talked, and it was the exact same thing. She had had a dream of sitting at the edge of a cliff, and God is inviting her, not commanding her, but he's inviting her to take that leap. And
Mm,
so I texted my wife, this was yesterday. We were journaling. uh, I journal in the morning, she journals when she gets to work, and within moments of one another, we were exchanging our journals, and they were the same theme was in both of our journals. We didn't talk about anything. There's no way we could have coordinated. It's just God. It's just confirming. And so on the heels of seeing her journal and how closely it relates to mine, this was the text that God prompted me to send her. He gave me the vision of us on the edge of a cliff with clouds below us so we can't see the ground. He said that he's inviting us to jump, but if we only dangle our toes off the edge, we limit what he wants to do in, through, and for us. But if we get a running start and leap out as far as we possibly can, then there is no limit to what he'll do. I'm ready to sprint to the edge and leap for distance. Will you run with me as hard and as fast as you? And she was like, absolutely. And
mm,
so he used that imagery, that vision yesterday, twice, and now today again. And actually there was part of it, I didn't even have all of that vision, but I talked about it in our little small group thing on Sunday. It's this faith thing, man. And it's not an isolated thing. Like you're in, I'm presuming you're still in Utah. You're in Utah. The
yeah.
lady I talked to yesterday is in Georgia. I'm in Nashville. I'm having all these conversations with people, and there seems to be this new, or maybe we're just discovering it, it's not new at all, new to us. There seems to be this new grace around faith and this new call and invitation, not command, this invitation to, if you'll dare to believe me, none of this is up to you. None of it is up to you. And he keeps bringing to mind the story of Peter stepping out of the boat. Lord, if it really is you, bid me to come to you. And he was like, yeah,
Mhm.
come on. And as long as Peter's gaze was in the eyes of Jesus, so his focus was purely on Jesus, he was doing what only Jesus had ever done.
Mhm.
Think about that. He stepped out of the boat onto a body of water, not calm seas, by the way,
Yeah.
and he was doing what only Jesus had ever done. And when he got his eyes on the circumstances, that's when he began to sink. And I think the what God is calling me to, and maybe us in some sort of collective, is if you will just keep your eyes focused on me and you'll trust me for your daily bread, you'll trust me for your provision, your protection, your direction, your instruction, your sanctification, your growth. You'll just trust me for all of that and keep your gaze locked purely on me, then the stuff that I will show you out of your peripheral vision will be unlike anything you've ever experienced in your life. And that's the invitation that in the best way I know how, in the best way my wife knows how, that's the invitation that we've said yes to. And again, we're not on the other shore yet. We're still in the canoe next to everybody else paddling along, but there is this peace that makes no sense because of where we are financially.
Right.
And there's this excitement of the invitation to open this clothing company, and it makes no sense because we don't know a single person who could write a check and make this happen. You know what I mean? Like there is no there is no visible way to us how this is going to work out. And he's saying, don't worry about it. I got it. And this isn't even your plan. This is my plan. And all I'm inviting you to do is walk into it with. And so I think as I read scripture, I think that's what he requires of everybody
Mhm.
is you get to a place where you've decided, yes, God, I believe you. Okay. Now comes the hard part. You're going to have to walk like you believe. And to the degree that you're willing to do that without plan B, we'll go somewhere that will amaze you.
Earlier, you mentioned the two scriptures, Hebrews 11:6 and Philippians 2:13, and just the tie-in of how the Lord actually can give us the desire and the ability to please Him,
Yeah,
and the faith to please Him,
yeah,
and trust. And your example of Peter walking out on the water, it's interesting that he asked the Lord, like, "You bid me come." It's almost
yeah,
like a request, like, "Give me the faith,
yeah,
you know, give me the faith to come out, 'cause I know that if you command me to do this, I could do it. But if I just go out on my own without focusing on you, there's no way." Um, and so I look at faith as, sometimes in scriptures it says exercise faith, and I translate that to practice trust.
mhm,
A lot of times with my clients or with anyone that I pray with, it's like, okay, we go through this experience, you hear God. Now your only job is to believe what he told you and trust
yeah.
what he's already said. And can you walk in that? Because if you can do that, then you can do the miracles. You can walk on water.
It's the second question that Jamie invites us to ask. What do you want me to know? And then what do you want me to do?
Right.
And I've prettied that up a little bit for the people that I talk to because I don't think God is ever sending me somewhere to go do something for him.
Yeah.
So I just say, what are you inviting me into? What are you inviting me to do with you? You know? And I get the visual of the my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And the way that they used to yoke oxen together in the Old Testament was you have a older, mature, strong bull, and you bring a younger bull and you yoke them together. And the more mature bull knows what he's doing. He 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 carries the bulk of the load. He's doing most of the pulling, and the only reason the other one's there is to train them on how to do it. This is how we do it. You're gonna walk next to me, you're gonna see how I pull a straight row. We're gonna get to the end, we're gonna turn around, you're gonna see how I line back up, and we're gonna pull through this thing. And the longer they're yoked together, the more maybe the load gets shared,
Sure.
you know? But initially, our yoke with Jesus is there's no expectation on you. I'm not asking you to carry the load. I'm not asking you to do the thing. I'm not asking you to strategize or have the words or think this thing through and have all of the answers. I'm just going to do some really cool stuff, and I want my friend next to me so I can show you what I'm doing and show you how to do it. And then there will be a day that I'm going to cut you loose and you're going to go do this stuff too. And I think that's the example that we see with the disciples, you know, as he walked with them, they watched him. And then he said, all right, now I want you to go. Don't take any money with you. Don't take another change of
Right.
clothes. Go and then come back and report to me. God, you're not going to believe it. Jesus, you're not going to believe it. Even the demons. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not impressed with that. I saw him fall from heaven, you know. But it like, that's the process that we see Jesus walking out with his disciples. I don't know that much has changed, except we don't see what they got to see because we're not willing to take our faith from here to here. We don't see contemporary examples in a very we see bits and pieces. We see anomalies where this group of people prayed for this girl and now she can see and she was clearly blind before. We see or we hear tell of those sorts of things, but we don't see it consistently. And we certainly, most of the time at best, it's not even arm's length to us. It's, I heard a story about a person who said, right? And I think that's because a lot of us are dangling our toes off the edge of that cliff, and very few have decided to run and jump for distance. And to the degree that we're willing to completely recklessly abandon anything that we could think we have control of, that's where we're going to see the supernatural. That's where we're going to see signs and wonders and miracles and healings and deliverances and the dead being raised back to life. They see it in other countries. They see it in other countries. And what's the difference? Their faith, they have, James, their faith has works. They're
Mhm.
putting action to what they say they believe. And so I think maybe it's not a new invitation to us in the West. Maybe we're just waking up to an invitation that's been there all along, and he's giving us the courage to harness that faith. It's exciting and terrifying at the same time. And his comfort to me has been, I put on flesh and walked among you, so I know how terrifying it is. I get
Mhm.
it. And there's no condemnation for you living in a place where your flesh has yet to be stretched to that place. But I'm inviting you into that stretching and I'll walk it with you and you're safe. There's nothing that's going to happen to you. I'll care for you. I'll take care of it. But he doesn't look at us disappointed because we don't have any contemporary example for us.
Yeah. Well, and I like to imagine that a Christ and a God who can take my 4 attempts at trying to follow him and
Yeah.
still make it amazing, because I don't know about you, but there are still plenty of times where I get distracted by life and I'm not listening, I'm not paying attention, and that to be able to be met by the Lord who loves us and says, "Yeah, well, when you're ready to come back, let's get into it."
Yeah. Do you have kids?
Yeah,
All right. So our kids are adult kids now, but when they were first learning to walk, I was never disappointed that they stumbled.
right, right. Yeah,
It was adorable to me that they were trying, you
yeah,
know? And I have to think I learned that from some. And so as we stumble and try to figure it out, we're not good, we're on wobbly legs, weak ankles. I just feel like God's smiling down saying, "Hey, look at them try. Look at them try." And let me affirm them for trying. Let me not tell them how they're doing it wrong. Let me, "Hey, you did great. You got 2 steps in. That's awesome. Let's go again. Let's go again. Are you ready today? We can take some more steps today. You're not ready? Okay. I'll be here tomorrow. We'll pick it up whenever you're ready." It's
right,
so loving, so gentle, and that's not to excuse I can live any way I wanna live and do whatever I wanna do because grace, 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 that's not
yeah,
that at all. But when he said it was finished on the cross, what was finished was he forgave me for every sin I had committed, I am committing, or I ever will commit. And so when it's finished. And so he doesn't even view us through any sort of lens that shows us in any state of compromise. He just views us through the lens of compassion and look, it's my kid. He's having a hard time, but look at him grit his teeth and try again, you know? And his active part of wooing us daily. Come back, come back, come back, you know?
yeah,
It's beautiful. I my life is completely different than it was 5 years ago, certainly than it was 10 years ago, and I can't tell you that I did anything to make that happen. I all I did was begin a relationship with the author of the book that I thought I knew so. And
yeah,
so every good thing that has happened in my life, certainly in the last 10 years, but every good thing has just been his gift to me.
yeah. Well, and I think too that the the assurances that we can be met with from the Lord, at least for me, they just enable me to show up each day with peace that I need to function.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I don't need to have anything outside of me to quote unquote work properly or to be successful in order for me to know that God's got my back.
Right.
And I think that that's a skill to get to. And that's something to practice. That's the exercise of faith that I think that we're talking
Yeah.
about is, can I practice that belief enough? Can I receive that belief enough and receive that message from God enough times until I actually start to get it?
Yeah. It's the ask, seek, knock, right?
Yeah.
If you're persistent enough, I'll give you what you're asking me for. And your persistence isn't to show me how committed you are. Your
Yeah.
persistence is to show you how committed you are. Yeah, that's the story of my life and my journey with him. And it's beautiful, not because of me, in spite of me, you know?
Yeah. I don't know if in your own experience, because I'm always seeking for deeper understanding of just this process of connection. And so as you've worked with people and as you have worked on yourself, is there anything that you feel is important to know when trying to connect with someone or like when trying to connect with God?
Yeah. The biggest discipline that I developed in this process, and I'm not really even a year into it yet, but it has made the biggest impact, is I journal 5 days a week. My wife and I wake up, we have a cup of coffee, she does her little devotional, I do a little devotional, and then I kiss her goodbye, she leaves for work, and immediately I sit down and open my journal, and rarely do I ever know what I'm about to write.
Mm.
Lord, this is what I'm facing: fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, whatever. And this feels true. And so I just early on began to write every day. It was one of those confessions sort of thing, Lord, I know you say that you provide for me, but here's what I'm looking at. And this feels real to me. And and if you don't drop me a lifeline in here that is truth, this what I'm perceiving as true is all I have in front of me. And so I'm going to end up responding to this in probably a very unhealthy way. So I'm asking you, what do you want me to know? What's your truth in this moment? If you'll send me a lifeline, I'll grab it with both hands. But I can't invent that lifeline for myself because I'm consumed by what I think I see.
Yeah.
And so write that confession out. Ask the question, what do you want to say to me? What do you want me to know in this space? What is truth from truth itself? Skip a line. And what I tell people when I walk them through this exercise is, after you've asked the question, what do you want me to know? You have to almost turn your brain off and just become a court reporter. And your only job is to get the quote right. It's not to try to figure out what you think he might be saying. What is he going to say next? How does this apply to what I just asked? You can't do any of that. You just have to, this is what I think he's saying. It doesn't seem like it applies here. What is it? And he will direct us. He'll lead us. He's going to give us those words.
Yeah.
And so the biggest discipline that I developed was journaling every morning. And just, even if God doesn't address the question that I asked him at the beginning, and sometimes he didn't address it at all. But what he spoke to me in the form of affirmation and encouragement and love, and this is how I see you, and this is what's true of you because I say it's true of you. Now the question that I came to him with, or the issue that I came to him with, is not important at all anymore. So it accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish without ever spending any energy to address the specifics of my confession. It was so, like, I can't tell you the number of times that I wrote, and again, I was court reporter, so I don't, it doesn't make any sense, whatever. And then to put the pen down and then go back and read and allow him to connect it, right? And as I read through it, I can't tell you the number of times that the pages are stained with tears, not because of sadness, but because of I don't understand how you, God, can see me that way because I don't feel like that inside of me. I don't feel like that's even true inside of me, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the lie. That's exactly where Satan wants you to be. But what I say is true because I can't. And just his affirmation and reaffirming of who he created me to be and who what my identity really is, not because it feels right, but because it is right. That's probably the biggest thing that has happened in me. And it's given me the most confidence to sit on a Zoom call or on a phone call or in I rode around with a guy in a dump truck for a day because that's what he did for a living and he needed somebody to talk to. And the only way I would have confidence to be that close to somebody for that long is because of what I've experienced into the Revelation 12:11 says we overcome the accuser by the blood of the lamb and the word of our testimony. The blood of the lamb was done for us. We don't have anything to do with it. But the word of our testimony is what will change lives. I'm not teaching him scripture. I'm not telling him what he should think about God. I'm telling him about my personal experiential knowledge of my God because he's done this for me in my life. And I
Yeah.
can't get that story wrong. That's the confidence that he's given me to have these conversations is he's not expecting me to quote Romans. He's just asking me to tell my story to somebody else, and as I do that, I don't know how many scriptures I've referenced just in this call, but I don't know those off the top of my it's Holy Spirit that brings that stuff in, and it's so incredibly wonderful that he does that for me. Makes me look a whole lot smarter than I am or a whole lot more devout than I am. I don't know, but yeah, and it resonates with people in a way that teaching them Romans would never resonate. You're just
Right.
you're telling me to do something rather than telling me what God has done in you. And if he's done it for you, then there's a glimmer of hope that he might just do some of that for me. The
Yeah.
dump truck guy, I'll just tell you briefly. His daughter was 16 years old, addicted to fentanyl. He's a single dad. And he was like, I'm in a dump truck 10 hours, 12 hours a day, and my daughter's getting access to this stuff. I don't know how I can help her. Now she's not even coming home at night. She's living on the street somewhere. I don't know where she is. I go out at night and try to find her just to make sure she's still alive, you know? How does that make sense in a God economy? And so I just share my story, which has nothing to do with addiction or abandonment or runaway child or any of that. Whatever God brings to mind, I just start to share. This guy talked to my buddy who does the deliverance stuff. A week later, he comes home from work on a Friday to see that his pickup truck's missing out of his driveway. He knows his daughter and her street boyfriend have stolen it. He calls the cops, not because he's angry, but because if they're high and get in an accident and kill somebody, he wants it on record that it's not him, but it's been stolen. And that day, he was supposed to attend a funeral. And he was like, man, I don't want to go. I haven't wanted to go, but I'm supposed to go. So he goes in, gets changed, puts a suit on, gets in his car. He's driving down the road and he sees his truck coming out of the intersection. So he calls the cops and he's like, I'm behind my stolen truck right now. I'm following down this road. If you'll get here, we can maybe avert some horrible disaster. So the
Yeah.
cops get there, they pull him over to the side of the road. The boyfriend's driving the truck. Daughter gets out of the car. And as he gets out of his car, angry, like any of us would be, approaching the car, God just changes him in an instant. And he goes to his daughter and he said, you have one choice that you can make, two options. You can go to jail because you let him in the house. You guys stole my truck. The key is in the ignition. You didn't hotwire it. You stole my truck. You can go to jail and you will detox while you sit there in jail, or You can agree to go to a facility and get help. But it's one of those 2 things. There is no third option. He had no leverage over her because she had turned 18. So he had no leverage to put her in a facility until God allowed it to happen that they stole his truck. So long story short, this has been months ago. She went through that um, treatment facility, went into a sort of halfway house, reintegration into society, little more freedom, but still some supervision. Went through that, did phenomenal, reestablished her relationship with Jesus. Now she's out, she's got a job. She is helping in the program that she graduated from. God did for him what he couldn't do for himself. And we had just spent a day bouncing around in a dump truck and just God just connected the steps and the pieces. And you need to talk to this person. You need to go.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, man. This life that God has given me is full of uncertainty. It's certainly not comfortable financially or any other way,
Yeah.
but it's the most beautiful existence I've ever experienced in my life. And for the first time in my life, I'm not existing, I'm not surviving, I'm thriving. And I don't know what 10 minutes from now is going to look like. I
Right.
have no plan, no agenda, nowhere to be, nothing to accomplish, no responsibility that he's put on me. The phone call that happened yesterday, I didn't know it was gonna happen until 10:30 in the morning. I
Right.
woke up with nothing to do. I can't make sense of it for
Yeah.
myself, let alone for anybody else, but I can just tell you that almost weekly, these kinds of stories emerge, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my life, and I don't have anything to do with it except to just show up wherever God happens to send me.
Yeah. Just to be you.
Yes. This morning, my journal, twice in my journal this morning, he said, just
Yeah.
be. I want to spend the day with you.
Yeah.
There's no expectation on you. I just want to spend the day with you. And so if you will just be with me, there's things that I have for you to receive, but I don't want you to spend all day in the Bible. I don't
Yeah.
want you to spend all day striving and grasping for. I just want you, as often as I come to mind, I want you to pause in that place and just be,
Yeah.
okay? And this call hasn't gone anywhere like I thought it was gonna go. We didn't talk about anything I thought we would talk about, but this is a God thing,
Right.
and if it's not for you, it's for me, So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you just showing up and for the series of events that connected us. Hey there, thanks for listening in to this conversation. And I just wanted to kind of close us out here by letting you know that if there is anything in your life that you really are struggling with, whether it's a decision to be made or whether it's just the fear of moving forward in a certain way, it could be overwhelmed with daily tasks and responsibilities. It could be the worries that you have for your kids. Whatever it is that is an anxiety or a fear within you, I want to let you know that there's help available and it's free. One way that you can do this is by joining the Receive Experience. It's a call that I do every single morning. And you don't even necessarily need to join live because I am posting the recordings or at least the first 20 minutes of these experiences onto YouTube. So you can go and on your own time, you can listen in and you can have an experience where you're asking the Lord questions and a space in which to listen. Half the battle with being able to connect with God is just giving him time. And at least if you're anything like me, your prayer life was you just talked at God and you really didn't give him space to be able to hear. So if you want someone to kind of guide you in a way to open up your heart a little bit, to get you in the right state, the right frame of mind, to be able to hear God, then that would be a resource for you. You could also join me live at 6 a.m. Mountain Time. every single day. Or another option for you is I'll put a link in the description, but you can actually just talk with me. You can set up a free appointment with me and I can help you. I can help you. So I don't think I will do this for long, depending on just how many people schedule, but I wanted to let you know that for right now, it's available that you can set up a time with me and I can help you, guide you in being able to receive concerning the things that are most concerning for you. And if you never feel like you can hear God or feel like you are able to discern whether it's Him or whether it's your own voice or your own mind, then having someone to support you is actually really, really helpful. I know what stops people from being able to sense and to hear God in their lives. So if you would like that support, if you have something that's on your heart, on your mind, that's weighing you down, or a consistent anxiety, consistent hardship and stress, then there's some resources available to you. And I want to make sure that you know about them and that you take me up on this offer while it's still available. And besides that, I just want you to have a beautiful and amazing rest of your day. Just know that wherever you go and in whatever you do, there is God's loving presence. He is delighting upon you, He is loving on you. And sometimes that may be hard to accept, but anyone who consistently listens to what I'm sharing and joins any of the things that I am doing, you will live into and work into a place where you can receive of that love much more often. And for some of you, that might be the best thing is for you to have a place where you can go and a community that you can go where you can practice receiving love because this life is hard enough just with its circumstances. And to add a layer of constant self judgment, constant self questioning, constant inner conflict, that makes it even harder. So, if you would like some support, I just want to let you know I'm here and I love you and appreciate you. So, thanks for listening. Talk to you later.